So in my last video, I dissected the Adventures of Chatran and explained why it was one of the weirdest atrocities of editing I've ever seen in my life. I guess the English at some point saw this movie and decided they could make it into the perfect family picture. And considering how the censorship of Japanese material for American audiences can be if they change too much about it, most audiences would consider that a really, really bad thing. That's where the Adventures of Milo and Otis comes in.
We're going to take a walk outside today, gonna see what we can find today.
Sure enough, Columbia Studios greenlit the translation of Chatran, but it's not as simple as translating it word for word. They completely rewrote the story, re-edited the footage, cut out inappropriate footage, and even commissioned the original filmmakers to shoot brand new scenes exclusively for the English version. Does it butcher something that's already lost in translation, or does it actually have a steady narrative? Let's take a look. The movie starts off with the same dark forest opening as the last one, but this time it has an upbeat country theme song.
We're going to take a walk outside today, gonna see what we can find today. We're going to take a walk outside today, gonna see what we can find today. Such a great big world that's all set up for a curious cat and a pug-nosed pup. Friends to meet, places to be, it's all so new and fun to see.
After that bit of catchiness, we get our first bit of establishing narration by the late and great Dudley Moore.
Except for the activity up in the hayloft, the farm was pretty quiet that morning. But a lot of the other animals were awakened by all that scurrying overhead. Some of them just accepted it, some were pretty annoyed, and a few quietly plotted revenge.
Yeah, those rabbits do look ominously evil for some reason.
The farm cat had just given birth to her first litter. She was determined to be a good mother and never yell at her kittens.
Aww, it's actually adorable this time.
But that approach would not last very long, because Milo, one of her kittens, was trouble from the very beginning. As soon as he could walk, he began wandering to the edge of the hayloft. "Milo, dear," his mother said, "that's not a good idea! Come back here, Milo!" she yelled.
So in this version, this sequence actually does what I said it should have done in the previous review, and actually edit in the scene where the pug and the kitten meet. And the writing for this initial encounter with Milo and Otis is something right out of an A.A. Milne book.
"You're a strange-looking cat," Milo said. "Oh, I'm not a cat, I'm a dog," Otis replied. Milo tried to figure this out and said, all right, a dog, I understand, but, really, deep down inside, we're all cats, right?" "No," Otis barked. "No. Deep down inside, I'm a dog. I'm a dog." Nevertheless, as if they knew how much they would need each other, Milo and Otis became best friends.
I really like this opening. It properly sets the tone for the lighthearted mood with the opening theme, indicating that this is going to be a humorous and fun adventure. Then it deepens with a slightly eerie music segment, then a loving piano piece for the kittens and the rest of the scene. This music playing is the classic piece known as A Foreign Lands and People by Robert Schumann. Normally I'd say the English version is lazy for not entirely composing an original score, but this theme is so warm and appropriate that it doesn't matter. It fits perfectly. And it's a heck of a lot better than that one theme we got through the entirety of the Japanese version. So next, this version wastes no time and cuts to the next morning where the kittens do not have an impossible time getting out. This scene cuts out all the pointless bits of waiting for stuff to happen, and overall it's just funnier.
"Milo, finish your breakfast or the puppies will get it!" his mother yelled. "Milo, did you hear me? And Milo, I've told you again and again, please, don't walk on the chickens."
Afterward, we get the scene where Milo falls into the water and his mother has to save him, but it's much better than the Japanese version because it has a tonal balance between whimsical hijinks and tender reassurance.
"Oh, Milo," his mother said, "look at you. Are you all right?" "Yes," Milo meowed.
The motherly safety Milo has is contrasted later on when he has no authority figure to fall back on when he's lost.
The months passed. Milo and Otis grew big enough to play outside by themselves.
So I didn't talk much about this scene in the Chatran version because I wanted to save it for this review. Basically in this scene, the cat and the pug play a game of hide and seek. The cat hides in various places and the pug tries to find him. It's a simple enough setup, yet surprisingly the context in both movies is completely different. In the Japanese version, Chatran is always good at hiding and Pusky never finds him. In the English version, no matter how good Milo's hiding spots are, Otis always sniffs him out.
You're in the pipe, Milo. Try again. How does he do that? Milo wondered.
It isn't until Milo finds a high point to finally win against Otis, only to feel as though the extra effort might not have been worth it for the tedium.
But Milo wondered if it was really worth the trouble.
That is a million times more interesting than the other version because it actually communicates a story. It isn't just a bunch of cute animal videos stringed together, it has a struggle of succession, one character trying to get ahead of the other. What's more interesting, having a scene where Pusky is being stupid and never getting anywhere with finding Chatran? Or having Milo being constantly beaten by Otis and finally outsmarting him in the end? The basic conflict and resolution is what good storytelling is about. Not only that, in addition to setting up that Milo is good at hiding to outsmart the bear later on, it also establishes that Otis can find Milo by just sniffing him out.
Oh, not the old Puss in Boots trick, Otis groaned. Cat's in the can, Otis shouted. And Milo slipped off to another hiding place.
This is important because then we can believe that Otis is capable of finding Milo during this long journey. After that scene, we actually get treated to an entirely new sequence shot specifically for the English version. It's a subplot where a hen lays an egg and Milo and Otis have to watch it. It's a nice and charming story, and though you could easily skip over this scene, it helps with building up the two main characters and how they play off each other.
You want me to kick it back to you, Otis? Milo asked. Now stop that, Otis said. I kicked it by accident. We can't start playing games with the egg. Now just leave it alone.
Pretty soon the egg hatches and the chick sees Otis first. It goes as you would expect it would.
Chick dried itself off, looked at Otis, and cheeped. Mummy, 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 mummy. Oh no, I'm not your mummy, Otis said. Your mum is a chicken. Now go back to Gloria. Do you understand? You're a chicken, not a dog. A chicken. Woof. The chick peeped. Woof, woof.
Woof.
Following that kerfuffle, Milo and Otis travel to the river and encounter a lobster in another new scene.
Wow! Look at this thing, Otis, Milo said. Do you think we can eat it? Who would eat something that looks like that? Otis replied, and continued on to the river. And then it happened, when Otis was just sitting on the dock, wasting time. Oh! Oh! Ah!
To be honest, I'm not sure if that was actually a fuzzy punching bag in place of the pug, or the actual pug being pinched, but it's a good effect.
Otis dried off and came back to settle the score with that thing.
Why is any object we don't understand always called a thing?
So Milo, continuing to play hide and seek, hides in a box next to the river and ends up drifting away. So the adventure begins, and rather than having the soundtrack announce the dangers yet to come, they actually take a more unusual but interesting approach by having an upbeat instrumental version of the main theme. As a result, we look at this scene through the perspective of Milo, who simply sees this as a fun ride. I like this version because it shows Milo's ignorant, childlike viewpoint, which contrasts later when the other dangers appear in the story.
Suddenly he heard something moving in the bushes. Was it Otis? Definitely not.
And speaking of dangers, a bear appears with appropriately threatening music. Pretty soon, the bear attacks Milo, then Otis joins in and dog paddles his way over to distract the bear. It looks pretty silly like the scene in the original movie, but at least it has more dignified music. Uh-oh, the soundtrack is drowning. Up, up, up.
Suddenly, Otis started swimming away and said to himself, "What am I doing? That bear is 10 times my size." And Otis came up with a much more sensible plan.
Okay, let's see how they handle this. They get on the shore, the pug leads the bear on, and bam! They cut to it running away. Nicely done. We didn't need the bear eating the dog, so keep it brief, move on, and have a nice steady pace. So for several seconds, the soundtrack mutes out as the narration continues.
Milo kept drifting along, But he was getting a little concerned because the river was beginning to move faster and faster.
And with that, the music starts to build up as the narration is absent. It has a trembling overtone as Milo begins to understand that he is trapped on this path down the river. While it's never truly scary, it keeps a sense of uncertainty. The other instruments come in, adding to the adventurous feel of the water rapids. But then when it gets to the waterfall, the music gives some trembling stings as it intensifies, builds up more, and falls as Milo falls down the waterfall. Once again, very nicely done.
Milo was all right. He'd lost track of Otis now, and he was drifting farther and farther from home.
As Milo realizes the desolation he's in, the score becomes bleak, cold, and haunting. It perfectly fits the nighttime atmosphere as he continues to drift across the water.
His trip down the river wasn't fun anymore. It had turned into something lonely and frightening. He began to wish he'd never jumped into this box.
Instead of text narration reciting Japanese poetry, we have descriptive lines like this.
In the water, Milo could see the reflection of the moon. It seemed to be trembling as much as he was.
That tells us so much more than any random poetic nonsense ever could. But the next morning, we see that Otis is still in pursuit of Milo. Let's see how they handle that flub in the mud hole.
He began singing a dog marching song.
Here comes the dog, strong and brave. Woof! Here comes the dog, your life he...
He then decided to skip the whole thing.
Oh, that was good. Over the next several scenes, we see Milo and Otis separately interact with different animals and situations. Okay, so here's what I like about this movie compared to the Japanese version. With Chatran, things just kind of happen, and we constantly switch from one set piece to the next with no segue. Nothing was connecting them together, and it didn't feel like any of them had a point. In Milo and Otis, while these scenes still play one after the other, what connects them together is the progression of character. When Milo starts off, he goes from a muddy swamp to a hot desert. He's barely surviving. These conditions make for a hard obstacle to overcome. When he comes across the fox, that's when he starts being resourceful. See, he has to find some food, and he figures that if he follows the fox, he'll probably find some.
Hello? Someone there? Fox called. Oh, well, time for lunch break anyway.
Once he finds the fox's hiding spot, he learns to be patient and waits for it to leave. Then he gains his chance and sneaks up to eat a dead muskrat. While Milo overcomes this obstacle, Otis comes across one of his own that is even too much for a dog of his intellect. He gets lost on the beach and becomes surrounded by a flood. At this point, Otis is at his wit's end, stranded on a rock with no escape. Just when all hope is lost, the soundtrack starts farting. Oh wait, that's a turtle.
Oh, not again, a sea turtle gurgled. Every time the tide comes in, some fool gets stuck out here.
Yes, I'm so tired of having to do this every single day. Now why don't you go from here and go back over yeah. Once the sea turtle appears, Otis realizes that he will now have to put aside his skills to rely on the help of a stranger. This is a really nice and fun scene that was added for this version of the movie. It is nice to see the pug character actually doing something as opposed to, well, you know, nothing. In the following scene, Otis comes across a familiar character.
He saw in the distance an animal that he thought might be helpful. Excuse me, Otis called out. I'm looking for a friend of mine. I'm looking for someone to play with, the fox said. I haven't got time, Otis said, sensing that this fox wasn't going to be any great help.
Yeah, it's like the people adapting this knew this scene was pointless, so they might as well make a joke out of it.
How can you be a dog? You have no tail. I certainly do. Look. Ha! You call that a tail? This is a tail. Ha ha ha!
Back with Milo, after encountering several dangers and just barely surviving, he comes across a quiet and tranquil meadow and sees a rather free-spirited deer willing to help him out.
You look tired and thirsty. A deer whispered. Follow me. Bound with me through fields of clouds, the deer said. I'm not sure cats know how to bound, Milo said. Just let your heart lead and your feet will follow, and will bound and leap like a gentle breeze. Okay, look, I've got it. I'm frolicking. Frolic with me, friend. Come, frolic.
Look how gaily we run.
I think I'm a little tuckered out, Milo said. Yes, it is possible to over-frolic. Here, let me show you a place where we can rest.
I really like this scene because it nicely contrasts with the conflicts Milo had to go through earlier. It shows that even when growing up in life and facing hard problems, you will always find the kindness of unfamiliar faces nearby.
Otis knew he was on the right track. He had trailed Milo from the deadwood swamp to the fox's meadow, and now if he just kept going, maybe he'd finally find the friend he missed so much. But now, it was the end of a long day of hard traveling.
This is the power of editing right here. They take these separate, unrelated shots and combine them together with proper music and pacing to make you feel the sadness this pug is going through. You know exactly what is going on just from these simple cuts. When I watch this scene, I don't think about the fact that the filmmakers probably stole this pug's chew toy. I understand that this character feels as though he might have failed in finding his best friend. And that is what separates Milo and Otis from Chatran. Honest and genuine human emotions that you feel through these animals. Once again, the night creeps up as Milo has to find a safe place to sleep. He finds an owl who is willing, though rather inconvenienced, to provide Milo with a place.
And what are you doing up here? The strange bird said to Milo. Hiding from the screech owls, I suppose. Sorry.
It could have been worse. You could have run into this owl.
Hello? Could I trouble you for a cup of sugar, please?
I'm the night bird, and that is a dreaming nest. So settle down in the nest, dear cat, and be prepared for the dreams. They may be sad or frightening or beautiful.
And by the way, I'm not David Bowie. Sure enough, Milo does drift into sleep, and we get a really sweet and nice dream sequence.
First, a sweet dream about being back on the farm and seeing old friends. And about the time his mother left him with a doting babysitter. And then came a dream that was very sad. A dream about Otis and how they used to play together when they were young. Oh, would it ever be like this again? Would he ever see Otis again?
It makes you totally forget this scene is just the leftover clips the filmmakers had just lying around in the studio.
Milo is suddenly woken up by some squealing noises as an enemy owl swoops down nearby. Yeesh! You should put that on Animal Planet's The Most Extreme. That is some genuinely scary stuff. Milo frees a nearby stuck piglet, who in turn leads him back to his family for a safe place. The next morning, Milo is fed milk along with the other piglets. I like this scene because it shows Milo a family life that differs from his own upbringing, since pigs are much more rough with their interactions. He keeps up his own manners as a cat and even learns a bit of parenting with licking one of the piglets.
Come on, said the cat. You've at least got to keep your face clean. Jeez, he thought. No wonder they'd call them pigs.
So Milo comes across a cliffside and tries to find some seagull eggs. But with some angry, violent seagulls nearby, it goes about as well as expected.
Seagulls were pecking him, hurting him. There was only one way for Milo to escape.
Gosh, I love this music. I referenced A Foreign Lands and People before and how it makes for a great leitmotif for all those soft moments. As a matter of fact, in addition to this movie having an original score, many other classic music pieces were adapted and used as well in the movie. So not only are children watching this movie getting some nice and fitting music, but they're also being introduced to some great classic orchestral themes for the first time. I'll just list a few of these pieces they used in this movie. And speaking of which, that's when the bear finds Milo again. Milo outsmarts the bear in the chest of drawers, and is pretty much edited in the same way as the Japanese version. But this one has the comedic luxury of Dudley Moore's improv.
Okay, tough guy, come and get me. No, up here. Up here. Come on. Just reach in and grab me. Too late. Want to come in? And just when the bear almost had him... Perfect shot, Milo said.
So the bear runs away, but Milo, still concerned that it might come back, finds a hiding spot in a tree, but is trapped by a snake. This scene is interesting because the narration is notably absent, but I think it is probably because the scene speaks for itself and we can easily understand what's going on. But then Milo falls into the pit below. Now he is trapped and at his lowest point in a place he literally can't get out of.
Climbing out of the pit was impossible. Milo called for help even though he knew it was useless. Nobody would hear him out here. But someone did.
And so now, the two friends finally find each other with just one more obstacle in their way. Gosh, I love this theme. It's called the Cotton King March by John Philip Sousa. Every time I hear the main chorus section, it just pumps me up. Frick yeah, let's get that cat out of there. Ugh. This is just a great sequence. It keeps building up as Otis tries to figure out ways to get Milo out. At a certain point, he gets a rope for Milo to grab onto, and at first, it works.
We did it! Otis yelled, opening his mouth by mistake.
So now, Otis has finally gotten his grip.
All right, hold on! Otis growled, making sure to keep his teeth tightly clenched.
I'm sorry, I can't get over how awesome this music is. This is the kind of music you can imagine crowds cheering with. Yeah, that was great. Fun fact, the movie actually gets to this point at the 55-minute mark, whereas the Chatran version takes about an hour and 15 minutes. That is called getting the job done and not wasting any time. And unlike the Chatran version, they do not get separated by some crows, and the two of them really are back together again. Everything seems just right for Milo and Otis until...
Listen, what was that? Otis said.
The conspicuous romantic music kicks in.
Hello, I'm Joyce. Joyce? Joyce! Joyce and Milo seem to get friendlier and friendlier.
Yeah, Dudley here knows what's up.
Otis had never seen such ridiculous behavior.
Yes, a dog would know better.
Never.
They're Twitter-pated.
Joyce, come back with me to my farm. I don't know. A farm isn't exactly my lifestyle. Oh, you'll love it. They'll all love you. I love you.
I actually really like this because it shows how animal romance works differently from normal romance. At least in fiction, that is. Although they don't know anything about each other, Milo and Joyce instantly have a connection to one another. Almost as if they can sense they were meant for each other. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too deep into this. But this is a connection that Otis doesn't understand because he doesn't know what it's like to be in love. When the three of them travel together, he always feels as though he's left out from the couple's romantic interactions.
This is something that's very relatable to real life. I, for one, see a lot of my own friends finding girlfriends, getting married, and moving on with their lives, and I haven't really gotten to that point yet. I'm still being patient and trying to figure things out, but oftentimes, as a result, I inevitably feel left out and disconnected from my group.
You two follow the river. I'm going over the mountains by myself. Don't be a fool, Otis. Stay with us. I'd rather go alone. Hey, where are you going, Otis? But he didn't answer. And he didn't even look back.
Now that is something that's really sad. Otis finds Milo again to look after him, only to find out he doesn't need Otis anymore. It's almost as if the journey seems to have been for nothing the way Otis sees it. I'm not even certain he's going back to the farm at all at this point. He just wants to be alone to figure things out. Soon enough, winter comes and Milo and Joyce find a place to stay warm. Meanwhile, Otis trundles through the snow on his own, and he comes across, what else? A female pug.
I'm Sandra, she said. Who are you? Otis. I've never met a dog like you, Sandra. No, Sandra. It's a French pronunciation.
And she inexplicably has a French accent because the adapters had the liberties, and gosh darn it, they're going to use them.
Now Otis began to understand what had come over Milo.
Now both of the groups find their own caves and each have their own litters. I didn't go into much detail about this in the Chatran review, but how cool is it that we get to see the actual birth of kittens? This is something that's just unheard of in kids' movies, especially ones with animals. In any other story, it would just be something that would happen off screen, and the spectators would always react to it after it happens. But with this, you see the birth, the amniotic sac, the drying off, and the nursing. I love whenever movies and TV shows are not ashamed of showing this sort of thing to children.
Oh, it's Otis Jr. Oh, it's Otis Jr.
Honestly, I don't think Dudley Moore was acting here. I think he honestly just found out that his son was born and he went crazy in the recording booth.
Oh, it's Otis Jr. Oh, it's Otis Jr. I'm a father. I'm a father. Oh, it's a boy. It's a boy. It's a boy. Otis, you ran out a little too soon. It's a litter. It's a litter.
All is wonderful as Milo and Otis build up their families.
You know, Otis said, we really should think of names for them. Oh, I did that already, Sandra replied. I gave them all French names. This one is Jean-Pierre, that's Francois, and the one on the end is Suzette.
Well, it's good to know the father has a say in none of this.
But as the cold weather dragged on, Otis and Sandra faced a serious problem. There was too much winter left and too little food. Otis knew he'd have to go out and find something.
Now we come to the real climax of the third act, as Otis has to survive through the harsh winter weather and is initially unsuccessful in finding food. Pretty soon, he is pelted down by a blizzard and lays in the snow, just about to give up.
But then he began thinking about Sandra and the puppies. They were waiting for him back in the cave, depending on him. What would happen to them if he never returned?
Pretty soon, they'll have to resort to eating each other.
And Otis felt his strength renewed. He forced himself up on his paws, knowing that he had to go on for Sandra, for the puppies, for dogs everywhere.
Well, okay, that last part was stupid, but still, dogs everywhere! And sure enough, Otis makes it through the blizzard and finds Milo, who is 3 steps ahead of Otis in a house full of fish.
You look hungry. How about some fish? Okay, but not for me, for my puppies. You have puppies? Me too. You have what? I mean, kittens.
So Milo then detaches a set of frozen fish for Otis to take back.
Hey, Otis. I really missed you.
The two families meet together next spring and join together for some fun interactions.
You're a strange-looking dog, Suzette said to Milo Jr. You're dogs, we're cats, he replied. And after the whole group was gathered together, Milo and Otis led the way down the road. The road that would take them home.
Now the journey's over and we're heading back home with a very good friend. You're never alone.
And that was The Adventures of Milo and Otis. I really, really love this movie. It's amazing how much it improves from the Japanese version. Honestly, the two movies are a night and day comparison. It's clear that the people who adapted and edited this movie knew what they were doing. They took an ambitious but nearsighted project and turned it into a masterpiece. It's a funny, well-paced, and charming film that is very well written and has some already amazing visuals to boot. While the story itself is simple on the surface, it also can have a meaningful outlook on the concepts of growing up, developing friendships, and maturing through hardships. To add to that, it has a wonderfully effective soundtrack and the great comedic talent of Dudley Moore. If nothing else, that makes it worth it. I saw this movie many times as a kid, and it still holds up for me today. Because of this, it's even my favorite movie of 1989.
And this has been Delta Reviews. Thanks for watching, I hope you found it amusing, and stay around as I try to figure out what to do next.
Excuse me, please? Oh. Oh.